Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, Commodity TV today in Zurich here, and we are at Matterhorn Asset Management, and with me here is the founder and managing partner Egon von Greyerz. And yeah, we want to talk about his business, about gold, silver, why you really should have it or why you need it, and how he works in a very different style on the physical investment side here. And of course, we want to talk about macroeconomic themes. Mr. von Greyerz, good morning. Thank you for taking the time, and yeah, welcome.
Pleasure to be interviewed by you. I know so much about you.
Thank you very much. Matterhorn Asset Management. What is your company about? Maybe you give us a short insight into your company.
Yes, we are wealth preservation experts. I set up the company really first as a private company for our own needs and for the needs of a few investors that I advised. And then eventually we opened it up for outside investors. And we specialize purely in wealth preservation in the form of precious metals, silver and gold, physical silver and gold, held outside the banking system in the name of the client. And this is as insurance against a system which we believe is so fragile that it probably won't survive in its present form.
Fantastic. So that means investors or clients come to you and say, I want to be outside the system, as you said, that's the one thing. But what is, let's say, the other advantage you can give your clients? I mean, how do you buy the gold, for example? How does that work?
Yeah. So most people don't understand gold, don't own gold. Gold is only 0.5% of world financial assets, investment gold I'm talking about. So therefore, there are very few who actually own gold, but the ones who do, and especially the higher level investors, they come to us. We are known all over the world. We have clients in 60 countries. And we help them to then buy. We buy at the best prices straight from the refiners. The Swiss refiners.
Oh, okay.
The Swiss refiners refine 70% of all the gold bars in the world. And therefore, all of them are in Ticino or Ticine here in the Italian part of Switzerland. So we buy at better prices than anybody else, or better than the banks that clients would get from banks, and then we store it in private vaults in Switzerland, in Zurich. We have the biggest private vault in the world outside the banking system in the Swiss Alps. And also the safest, and we also store in other places like Singapore. And
fantastic. And you said it's stored in the name of the client, not in the name of Matterhorn Asset
Management. We are not. We follow our own wealth preservation principles, so we are not a counterparty. So we are a facilitator. We organize everything for the client. We buy, we sell, we store, we ship their existing gold from anywhere in the world if they have some. And then we look after the client. We advise him. We are specialists. We give a holistic service. We are specialists in this area. So we understand the world. We understand gold. And so that's what clients appreciate.
Okay, super, fantastic. At what, let's say, volume does your service start?
It starts at $250,000, and then
Swiss francs.
Swiss franc or dollars, which is the same. And then it goes to, and in euros, it's just 220,000 euros. So, and then it goes to unlimited levels. There's no upper limit, obviously. There's still gold available. There won't be for long, but the physical gold, because the market, as we know, is a paper market mainly, and silver is we're seeing already shortages in silver.
Oh, that's interesting. May I get that take on that? Because I always have the feeling that I'm one of the only guys who see the shortage in the silver market. Now you say the same. How do you come on that?
Yes, so we're seeing now that even for normal amounts, we're not talking about hundreds of millions, right? We don't, but even in the millions, it's harder to get hold of silver. It's gradually getting harder to get hold of silver.
Interesting. What is the reason for that?
The reason is that there is no silver in the world. The production is very small. Nobody has any stock of silver anywhere. With gold, of course, central banks has major holdings that they lease to the market, and they feed the market with that silver or with that gold all the time. But that doesn't exist in silver, and the silver market is primarily a paper market, as we know, and therefore we are seeing now that there's very little silver. So the price doesn't reflect supply and demand at all. And of course, industrial demand is increasing also.
Solar,
solar.
That's the big thing,
absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Interesting. What would you say would be like a fair market price for silver? What is your feeling when you see what we have just discussed in the last 2 minutes? What is your feeling? Where should the silver price go to?
Well, where it's going to go to, I mean, that is very clear to me. Now, you're talking about a gold-silver ratio, which is now at the all-time peak, basically, in modern times, around 87. When we dipped down when the silver went up to $50 in 2011, the ratio went down to 30. From 87 now to 30. So once this market starts to go up, the precious metals, and I don't think we're far from it, then silver will move 3 times as fast as gold, in my view. So my long standing target of gold, which is the minimum in today's prices, not in inflationary prices, is 10,000. You could say there's an arbitrary level, but I think that arbitrary level will be reached, and probably in hyperinflationary terms a lot higher. That would put silver at over $600. That sounds ridiculous today, of course. Nobody will believe it.
That's right.
But you've seen what happens to Bitcoin, which is has no intrinsic value. You see how quickly that can go up. And as I said, there is no silver available. And when that paper market fails, both gold and silver will go so fast.
What do you think could be a trigger point for the paper market that the paper market fails?
Well, the world economy is in a total mess today. And I spend a lot of time trying to understand risk. That's really my speciality, understanding risk in the world, economic risk, financial risk, geopolitical risk. And that was the reason why we went into physical gold and silver. We're not gold bugs. We're not in love with gold or silver. We just see that as the best insurance against the rotten financial system. We don't think the system can survive. And therefore, the trigger can be anything. The trigger can be a bank going under, corporate problems in the U.S. because corporate debt is higher than ever, for example. It can be geopolitical. So there are so many triggers, and because of the risks in the world, and we never had a risk situation ever where every single country is now over-indebted and basically bankrupt. Whether you take China or whether you take Japan, or the US, or the Europe, EU, etc. They're all in the same boat. There's no one who can save them anymore. It's not like when Argentina had problems in the past and they can be saved, or you can write off the few hundred millions or billion.
Or the World Monetary Fund comes and helps a bit.
Exactly.
That's not possible.
Yeah, absolutely. That's not possible now. There's no one to save the world because everybody's in the same situation. So the trigger could be anything. But of course, that paper market is a manipulated market based on BIS, Bank of International Settlement, in Basel, through bullion banks. They operate in that paper market. You know that gold trading, daily gold trading, is 850 times daily mine production.
That makes no sense.
850 times. That doesn't make sense. And in my view, a big part of that trading is just to try to maintain all these paper positions because there is no physical backing. And central banks have lent or leased or even sold a major part of their official gold holdings. In the past, if they leased it to the market, it would stay in the London pool or in the New York pool. Now, China buys everything, or Russia, and India, of course, continues to buy. And therefore, all of that gold that used to still stay in the West is now gone to the East. So all the central banks have, when they've leased the gold, like Germany has leased half of Germany's gold is outside of Germany still.
And they still try to get it back.
Yeah, they've got exactly half back now, but so they have 50%. But the other half is in New York and in London. And I can promise you that a majority of that is all leased to the market, and that's now gone to China. And China, all the bullion banks that have taken that gold from the central banks is an IOU. And they have an IOU, a paper IOU, say the bullion bank owes them some gold. But they're never going to get physical gold for it. And this is and the same in silver. This is what's going to crack these markets.
That sounds to me like the target 2 payment system in the European Union with the ECB. owing Germany like over $1 trillion.
Absolutely.
It's on the paper. They never will get it back.
No,
So that's
never,
like the same system in gold and silver, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Wow, crazy, Jesus! Huh? I didn't thought about that, but this explains it extremely well, I would call it. So maybe can you give us, I wouldn't say a prognosis or a projection, but how long do you think can this system survive?
Well, I will happily admit that I thought it would happen quicker than it did, because we went into physical gold for the reasons that I explained, because of the risk we see already in 2002 at $300 an ounce. So we clearly been right on the direction and right on having gold as insurance. Of course, we had the crisis then in 2007-9. But of course, since 2011-12, we've seen gold and silver correcting down and then going sideways for now 6 years roughly. So that's taken longer than expected. But you know one thing, if you look at it from the point of wealth preservation, you can't buy your fire insurance after the fire has started, so you've got to hold it. I think we are now getting near. I think if I look at, global debt has doubled since 2006. Since the great financial crisis started, global debt has doubled, and it's trebled since 2000. So we are getting to a point now when it's unsustainable. I mean, you take the US hasn't had a real budget surplus since 1960.
Great idea.
And China is now also, of course, with their banking system has exploded, and their borrowings have exploded from $1 trillion to 35 trillion in this century. And of course, Japan is bankrupt and just printing money, buying their own bonds all the time. So I think we are actually getting very near. Technically, it looks like it's going to happen this year. Stock market has either already topped or topping now, or it could, what I call, have the final hooray, which means that the final move up later this year. But it's whether it happens now or later in this year, this is the final move, and we are going to see a very long-term downtrend that will last for maybe a decade, maybe longer in stocks. And of course, at the same time, the precious metals will start going up dramatically. I think we will very quickly go up to. We have this what I call the Maginot Line, which is the from the Second World War. I call that's a line of resistance at 1350 for gold. When that breaks, I think we'll go quickly to 1600 and then continue up. But I mean, that's all technical, and it really makes no difference from a wealth preservation point of view. But people still like to talk about levels. So we see that happening this year, and then we think in the next 5 years or so, eventually we will have hyperinflation. Eventually, the central banks have no other tools but to print money. There's no other solution to. And of course, you cannot solve a debt problem by incurring more debt and printing more money. So that's not a solution, but that's still what they will do. And then at some point after that, there will be an implosion of the financial system. That's the only way that the world can continue to go forward. The debt has to disappear. We have to have a real forest fire, and the debt has to go away. So that will happen. It'll be tough, and it'll be tough for most people. But sadly, that's the only way that this can happen, in my view. Wow, I hope I'm wrong, but I doubt I am.
Yeah, because
I doubt I am.
What you just described, I mean, it makes absolutely sense from the numbers. It makes absolutely sense from what we are seeing with all the debt levels. But I think if we go, let's say, into that scenario, and you go out in the street, even here in Zurich, you should be armed, right?
Yeah, you're right. There will be social unrest. There will be more crime. But, this is not the first time in history. It will just be a transitional period, which will be very difficult. But it has to happen. There's this old expression that this too will pass. This will also, it'll be transitional. After a while, the world has restructured, the debt has disappeared, and we can start again. The world can never continue to grow from this debt level.
Yeah,
that has to disappear.
Yeah.
And that disappearance of that debt will also mean that the assets will implode and will be tough times, really tough times. I know, but that's the world has always, so far, always survived in a different form and for a while with suffering. And it will be terrible for a lot of people.
That's right.
But,
absolutely.
Yeah.
But that means, to come back to your company on the final here, with your solution and your system, your clients have their, let's say, store of wealth, meaning in gold and silver, outside the system, so they would be not affected if banks are shutting down, for example, because this is what you are implementing, right?
Yes, yeah. I am, yes. Or they're shutting down, or they will bail in clients' money, which means that, before we had bailouts when governments assisted the banks and with money, but as we saw in Cyprus, first example of bail-in, that's when actually the clients lost half of their money, more or less, in the banking crisis in Cyprus. That's going to happen all around the world now. So anyone who has any asset of any kind in the bank is likely either to lose it that way, or, of course, they will, if they have money in the bank, that will be worth nothing, because the printing of money that will take place in the next few years will mean that the money will have virtually no value. And therefore, that's why we have to be outside the banking system. The banks are not safe. I mean, our clients they are, of course, more typical wealth preservationists than the average investor. So they have maybe a minimum of 25% in gold, and many have more.
Wow. So that is something what you would also, let's say, advise investors have much more in physical metals than, let's say, the usual approaches.
Yeah, but that's our very strong view, and it's not for our sake. I don't, people say, well, you're only doing this because you want clients. Not at all. We did this for ourselves first, not for clients, and then people wanted to help from us. So whether they do it for somewhere else, it doesn't matter. But I actually think that, this is life insurance, and when you buy life insurance, you want to buy the best life insurance and store it in the best places. It's not going to save you from social unrest and all the other things happening in the world, but at least you have some financial security.
That's right. Yeah, and you can store, let's say, your wealth. You can maintain part of your wealth.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Super. Mr. von Greyerz, thank you very much for that interview. That was really interesting. And I hope you're wrong still. I totally agree that gold and silver should go higher, but I hope that you're wrong, that it comes that horribly. But probably there's no way out.
I hope I'm wrong too, but I fear that I'll be very right. So
okay, so then let's see what happens. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I enjoyed it. Thank you. Good.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, there was Egon von Greyerz, founder and managing partner of Matterhorn Asset Management. And you heard it. It does not look good really in the system. And I think he's definitely right that we have major problems here. And we have too much debt in the world. So it is absolutely necessary to hold physical gold and silver. Matterhorn Asset Management is a super specialist on that, because they are outside the banking system. That is very important when you hold investments like this. And I suggest you have a look on that. Thanks for watching us, and bye-bye from Zurich.